was a mistake in the counting, then, this could turn nasty very, very quickly. But it's very, I'm sure there will be a court process, which is 14 days. So I think the swearing in will be delayed for a little while. But if they do find an anomaly on the counting, then we could be in for a runoff, in which case it will turn really nasty, I think.
Okay, Salim, please tell us, we've got our own INEC members of staff and commissioners who are here and an independent observer who's being in Nairobi. Are there reports of any malpractices apart from the issue of problems with counting and use of technology?
Yeah, there obviously, the IEBC here spent an enormous amount of money in this whole electronic relaying of votes to the main centers. Now their server crashed, or there's some problem or some virus, so that obviously leads to a lot of allegations of some sort of tampering. Now nobody knows whether that's true or not. I personally think the IEBC has done a really good job under an enormous amount of pressure to try and temper expectations, to resolve problems, to admit when there have been problems, because that's often what they don't do, is admit that there's a problem. They've come out straight and said, we've got problems, but these are the solutions that we're implementing. So I think they've tried really, really hard to make this as transparent a process as possible. They resorted to the manual counting, which really didn't show a difference in the results per se. In the electronic counting, Uhuru was still leading by 600,000 or 700,000 votes when they had to stop it, and he's ended up winning by 700,000-800,000 votes. It's manual count. So this hasn't been. I don't think it's been a flawed exercise. It's just been a long exercise, and we have to commend the Kenyans for the amount of patience that they've shown waiting for these results.
Okay, what would you put it down to, the success that you've experienced as a result of the number of people that have been out to vote? Because we have pictures here brought by Mike Igini, who works for the INEC, who's an INEC Commissioner here. In terms of the turnout, what would you put it down to?
Oh, I think there was a huge amount of hope that the Kenyans wanted to see some change. This is we're electing a completely new president. In 2007, there was an incumbent running. Now it's a completely new president. There's been a massive amount of campaigning going on by all the candidates, and there's been a lot of people pushing people to go out and vote and just actually exercise their right. And I think, again, it was a wonderful sight to see. Miles and miles of lines of people waiting patiently, laughing, talking to each other, joking. But it was, in the intense heat, standing for 16, 17 hours to cast their vote. And it really was a wonderful sight. And I think the Kenyans feel, vindicated about what happened 5 years ago, that their vote will really count this time. And I'm hoping that that's going to be the case.
Okay, well, final question for you, Salim. In terms of way forward now, why would a sitting leader like Raila Odinga be losing out in this election? What was it he missed out on in terms of his campaign? What was missing? How could Uhuru come and win this election in this way? Very quickly, Salim, because we've got to wrap up now.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question, Coyote. I lost you.
Okay, I was just asking that what was the missing element for Raila Odinga, because one would expect that the power of incumbency would enable him win this election comfortably. What was the missing element in his campaign that made it such that it seems Uhuru is almost running away with it?
I just think that he wasn't as organized in his campaign as Uhuru was, and I think Uhuru obviously put a lot more money into it, and there was a lot more organization, a lot more campaigning done by the Jubilee Alliance as opposed to the Court Alliance, and I think a lot of that boiled down to basic budgets and the fact that Uhuru had more finance available to him.
Salim Amin, A24 Media CEO, thank you very much for being part of Sunrise this morning, and we will keep in touch with you. Thank you, Salim.
Thank you, Sadi. Thank you.
Really quickly about when he talked about it. There is no such thing as electronic counting. All they were doing was transmitting results from the polling unit. So what we call polling units. So everybody had, the polling officers had mobile phones. So once they counted manually, you still have to count. People voted manually, so you can't count it electronically. So they counted manually. So the idea was to be able to send it from your phone. So it goes to the tallying center, and they begin, so in real time, all the media agencies could plug into their API. So for example, if it was here, channels would be able to plug into INEC. And as the results were being transmitted into INEC's electronic board, you would have access to it, and it will come on your screen as well. That was the plan they had. So there's not electronic voting. But what happened, as you rightly said, technology is a tool created by humans. Now, if humans don't, but there are processes and procedures, if you don't train people adequately to use technology, you can't blame the technology. So even though technology is taking a beating for failing, really it's a functional process. So they admitted, and I think that's also a good thing, that their chairman constantly gave updates and was giving, actually they admitted when they had issues, gave updates to people, so people were aware, so there wasn't as much tension in that regard. So it said the people, they weren't properly trained. They had problems with their mobile phone. So if you have that, technology will fail you because you're not using it properly. Absolutely. So just to be clear, it wasn't an electronic vote counting. They voted manually, was counted manually, but to speed it up, they wanted, instead of flying people from Akwa Ibom to Abuja, transmit it electronically. It's there in real time. Everybody has access to it. Citizens, online, news media agencies, so people can start to interrogate the system. 48 hours later, it wasn't working. They shut it down and they said, okay, everybody, in a sense, come to Abuja. We'll start counting in Abuja. And that's really what happened.
Okay. So, Musa, one question for you. At the polling booths, were there any issues when the counting was being done? Or was it credible?
I think, like I said, the process in Kenya, I said the electoral officials and even the voters they have discharged and acquitted themselves. That is to tell you that the process is more than credible. If there is anything like that, it's more than credible. Because what really baffles me, you go around the whole, what they call streams in Kenya, you cannot find one politician. One, you can't find. The only person at the polling unit, or what they call streams, the only person you could find there are what we call the agent, the party agent. And these party agents are well trained and ready to do their job. In fact, nobody will tell you that they know what they are doing, because they just sit down there, watch, they don't interfere with the process, except maybe if there is an issue. 2 or 3 out of them will be invited by the presiding officer, who seems to be in charge, perfectly in charge, doing all that he's supposed to do, to ask them, and if they agree, he takes a decision. So many things. In fact, I think I would like to score the Kenyan election at 99%, even though some things go wrong. But then I will, considering what happens here and what happened in other African countries, honestly, you cannot even, I cannot run away from scoring them.
Okay. So when the final register didn't show up and they had to use the provisional register, were there any issues? Did anybody make any fuss?
No, that is what I'm telling you. There were no issues. There were no quarrels. There was nothing. Everybody, in fact, they take an issue. Let me tell you, the presiding officer seems to be like likened to what we call the chairman of INEC in Nigeria, because in the poll he takes charge. He is in control. You can see it vividly that he is in control and he knows what he is doing. Probably because now of constant participation in the process. There are electoral officials there. When I speak with some of them, they told me they have been in this business for the past 10-15 years. So they are totally in charge. They know what they are doing and they do it perfectly. So that's why I told you, I said I cannot but score them 99%, despite the failure from the
final register and
the final
technology.
I think what really failed them is the transmission of the result. Even the handset that they were using, you could see it that it's just a handset that immediately you open, it doesn't do anything. You can't call with it, you can't send text message with it, you can't browse with it. The only thing it does is the transmission of the result. So I think the problem is, like I said, is that of training. And that's why I say we have to be careful. But like I told you, I give them 99%.
Okay. What do you score them?
Well, I will reserve my score after the entire process. But to quickly affirm what they have.
No, Mike, no. So your score based on what you saw.
What I've seen so far.
Yes.
You see, two of us, we have given his own score. So I think that by the time I do a little X-ray, then you will be able to guess what should be my score. of what it should be. First,
Mike, always remember that time is not our
I know
friend.
time is